I wasn't getting on very well at all with my mum, so I went to stay with my friend for a bit up the road because she was just upset that I was pregnant. So one of my mum's friends said that she'd got a room that I could have, and that's where I met this elderly lady, and she was such a nice lady, I can't remember her name, and she was blind but she was knitting, I'll always remember. And she said she knew somebody that could sort me out and settle me down with somewhere to live, but I'd have to go into some sort of homeless facility, and that's how it come about. And this lady put me in touch with Marion, her name was, and she was a social worker, but I think it was the private sector. It's got to have been. And I went to see her, and she filled all these forms in. She asked me if I was keeping the baby, and I said yes, but they still had to take descriptions of the father and questions about the genetics of everything in case I was putting the baby up for adoption later on. And then she says I could go into a mother and baby facility because I could only stay in there 16 weeks in total. And because I was keeping my baby, that meant a month after. Whereas an adoption, you only stay for the pregnancy, and as soon as you've had the baby, then you leave. So I think I went in round about 6 months pregnant.
So you met people from a lot of different backgrounds.
Oh, yeah. The one I was trying to get in touch with, she was older, and I did look up to her a little bit. I was 17, so she seemed ancient to me, but she must have been about 25, and she was in there, and she's sitting there knitting with lipstick on. She was quite glamorous, and I really took to her, and she felt as though time was passing her by, so she got pregnant on purpose.
And was she in a relationship, or what?
No, she just picked somebody who she thought, but she seemed a lot older and more mature and quite sophisticated. She couldn't get a relationship going, so she decided to just get pregnant, and she got an house at Oak Tree. And after I'd left, I did go and meet up with her and stay the night at Oak Tree with her. And then the other girl that was putting her baby up for adoption, that was so sad, because she'd been put in there by her mum and dad. I think she lived up north somewhere, Yorkshire way, and her mum and dad didn't want the neighbours and anybody to know she was pregnant. They'd got a corner shop, so they sent her there, and of course they'd pay full whack, you see. And as soon as she had the baby, she had a little boy, she went back, and I saw her years later, and she stayed with the same fella, but her mum and dad just didn't allow it. So, and that's what makes me laugh. It was 1982, and it's still happening. It's being sent off to the middle of nowhere to have a baby, so nobody knows about it. She was about 16.
And so if her parents said no, she didn't have the right to keep a baby?
No.
Oh, that's sad, isn't it?
It was sad because she wanted to keep him. And she wasn't... she hadn't got learning disabilities. Yeah. And she wasn't allowed to keep a baby.
And do you remember how she felt about being there?
She didn't want... She was all right being there, but she certainly didn't want to give a baby up, but she had no choice. It was awful. She used to cry. She went into labour, she come back, no baby, packed her bags. Mum and Dad fetched her, I think. That was it. But she got a photograph. She's just upset. She looked like she just lost the will to live to me. It really sad. In my head, I'd like to think that because you've got 6 weeks to change your mind, haven't you? When you're putting a baby up for adoption, because it goes into foster care for 6 weeks. Well, it did then. I don't know if it still does now. So in my head, I've always thought to myself, well, probably she, you know. But I know she didn't, because when I saw her. But there must have been more than her at that time, because that's where it was, an adoption place.
So that's your overall feeling for what the place was for?
Oh yeah, without that. I think to fill the capacity, I think if you've got a big house like that, like you said, it's possibly 10. It always seemed a bit more than that. But say it housed 10 girls, you're not going to get 10 adoptions. all in one go. So they've got to get that, like care home, they've got to get that rent and money, or the the diocese,
yeah,
have got to get that money. So they're going to open it up, aren't they? But primarily, that was an adoption agency. Yeah, primarily. I wonder how much her mum and dad paid for her to go there. I bet it was thousands, you know. Did she end up leaving her mum and dad's anyway? Which I bet she did, you know. Because how can you go back after you've had such a big event in your life and go back to normality? She wouldn't have stayed with her mum and dad, not in a million years. She'd really resent that, I think. Because she was being forced to do something. She probably went on and had other kids, so then you think, why didn't you just keep that one? I mean, 2 years later, I don't know if she did, but 2 years later she could have had another kid and kept that one. Don't know. But it was the first time I'd come face to face or in any of that situation. I don't know, I managed it on my own, looking back. Going to a place like that, really. I did get a flat. So it was quite hard, but at the time you just take it on, don't you? It did. I think it opened my eyes a lot about other people. I just didn't realise. I think we was quite sheltered growing up then. That's what made me. The conclusion that I come to was that we was quite sheltered growing up, even though we didn't think we was. We must have been. All of a sudden, within a couple of days of being somewhere like that, your whole outlook has changed. Because you're meeting people from all different walks of life that you didn't know existed. And it was a right growing up thing. It really was. But it was the adoptions that used to get me, because it was all done behind closed doors. It was just secret, and I don't think there's a need. But that was the church thing. That was the church side of things, and how it was done traditionally. I think they didn't break the tradition soon enough. A lot of the ladies in there that was having an adoption probably won't broadcast it. It was a bit funny really, because you didn't really ask the circumstances behind the people. It was a bit strange like that. It was left unsaid.
So when I spoke to you before, you mentioned that there was some friction sometimes between you and the other girls, because you'd got your own stuff and you were clearly in a different situation to them. So can you describe like how you were there in a different capacity to them?
Well, I was there solely because I could get a flat or an house out of it. That was my means to an end. Plus, it was giving me a roof over my head where I wasn't pressured into. There was no pressure. So I'd got all my own things. I collected my own things and bought my own things. But the other girls didn't like that, I don't think. And I think that caused the friction a little bit. But it wasn't bad friction, don't get me wrong. But there was a lack of respect for my things.
Okay.
I think that's what I'm trying to say. But they never went in my room for looking or anything like that. It was mainly this pram. It really annoyed some of them because I'd got my own pram. But I was proud of that pram because I'd saved £100 and that's a lot of money then. And my mum didn't help me with that. I did that myself.
Can you describe going to church?
Awful. We had to sit at the back. If it was about 10, the last pew at the back, that's where we had to sit.
Why would that be?
Because we was fallen women. I wasn't religious, so we had to go. That's what I hated it. Had to go. Sunday mornings, had to go. And then when you had your babies, you took them with you as well, on the back row. So all the villagers that lived in Forest Town and Clipston was at the front and we was at the back. Nobody spoke to us. Nobody. And I know that you can go up and take the wafer and that, can't you? These girls couldn't. So really that vicar's got a lot to answer for. Or whoever decided for them to sit at the back. 1982. You could watch Boy George dress up as a woman on top of the pots in 1982, couldn't you? But you still had to sit at the back of a church if you was pregnant.
Did anybody question it?
No, of course they didn't. A lot of them weren't very intelligent anyway. I'm not being horrible, but there wasn't. It's a shame really. I'd like to know what happened to a lot of them, if they're still about, and what happened to the kids.
If you were in that situation now, do you think you would say anything?
I wouldn't even go in the door. But yes, I would say something. I don't think it had happened now, but it should never have happened then, because it was only 1982. It wasn't 1952. That's the bit I can't get me. It's like Forest Town and Clipston was like 30 years behind. Even the shops, 30 years behind. I mean, I don't know what it's like now.
In what way would you say it's behind?
Well, it was like just stepping back in time with the morals, wasn't it? It was like you'd got somebody like me that was allowed to keep my baby, and you got somebody like this other lady that I met who wasn't allowed to keep a baby, but who was both. She was in a better position than me, her family, because they was for money. So you'd think that she'd be able to keep a baby, wouldn't you? So I never quite got it, but it's just the people. Her parents obviously must have cared what other people thought, which was more important than their own child. So yeah, it was very hard. It was hard work, but at the time, it was like I said, it was a means to an end to me. Gwendoline Grove, I think, well, everybody knew what it was for. And a lot of people in Clipston, was the older generation anyway, I don't know what it's like now, but at the time, they'd lived there years and years. Oh, it was a pit community, wasn't it? Miners. So I think they was just older and they come to their own conclusions. And I don't think Gwendoline Grove House did itself any favours by going along with that, by making us sit at the back of a church. Because you're not, straight away you're segregated, aren't you? And there's no good thing comes out of segregation. I had to go to King's Mill for a check-up, because you had a few more check-ups then than you do now. And I was escorted to King's Mill Hospital, to the maternity unit, and I had to do a water sample. And when they did the water sample, there was blood in it. Well, your escort didn't go in with you, she just waited for you. And I'd got a few things in the water sample. I'd got protein, blood and sugar. So they said I was in labour, slow labour. So I said okay, but I didn't tell anybody, because I didn't want my baby in King's Mill. I wanted to get back, so I used to go to my mum's every weekend, and I think it was a Friday and I was due to go. So I still went. I didn't tell the escort, because they're not allowed to find out all that. And I went home and went into labour 3 weeks earlier. And then after I had the baby, you was allowed to stay in hospital 10 days then if you wanted to, and I chose to, rather than go back. So I couldn't have liked it much, but I did go back, because obviously I had to, and I used my new pram.
So what was the overall atmosphere like in the house?
It was alright. It was teenager. Yeah, it was teenager. Everybody would sit round the telly on Thursday to watch Top of the Pops. So it was very teenager. It was okay. Yeah, it was a nice place really. Apart from if you delved too deep, thought too deeply into things. But apart from that, the general day-to-day living, it was okay. You could have a bath when you wanted. The baths was massive. Oh, ever so deep, old-fashioned. You know, like the toilet has still got the chain, but it was very clean. You can't fault how clean it was, and the care was excellent.
Did you feel like you were respected in there?
Yeah, I'd say Miss Gurney was absolutely. I mean, I know I got in trouble with the torch, but she was very compassionate. Chris, she was really nice. I think her job, to be honest, was some sort of support worker, but sort of a mentor. So, like, some of the girls couldn't do anything, so you'd get shown how to do it. So I think she did a bit of cooking and that with the girls. I think that's what they were doing, learning you to look after a baby. It was very homely, and it wasn't clinical like I expected it to be before I got there. It was very, very homely, and it was very welcoming. You didn't want for anything, apart from your family, if you miss your family, but you didn't want for anything. There was 2 in my room. There was 3 in some of them. Miss Gurney had her own quarters, so I think she must have had a bedroom and a sitting room. And it wasn't like an home, or it wasn't like a hostel. It was very, very nice, and it was very homely. You know, carpets and curtains and vases and knickknacks. It was very homely. In fact, it's a shame they pulled it down because it was a beautiful property. The kitchen was nice. Downstairs there was a pram park, kitchen, big hallway, big massive front door, and then there was the lounge where you get gathered to watch telly. And all it wasn't a games room or like that. It was settees, chairs, just like a living room. It was lovely. And then there was the one where you sit, another lounge where you could be with your babies. There was quite a few babies in at the time when I was there, so they must have been keeping the babies. We never went anywhere else apart from the village. I mean, we could go back to our parents at weekends, but I don't know if many did that, because I don't think a lot of them had parents. A lot of them had been brought up in care, you see, and I'm wondering if they were still 15, they'd still be in care, wouldn't they? They'd still have a care order on their head. So that's probably where they went. So I'd go home at weekends, but I don't think many of the girls went home at weekends because I don't think they had any homes after them. There was a few workers there, not loads of workers. Don't think you had to help with the dinner, but you helped clear away. But the food was fantastic because they used to get the meat from the slaughterhouse across the way.
And what would a mealtime look like? Did everybody eat together?
Yeah,
or?
There was no separation. You all sat round the table. And Miss Gurney, she sort of pleated skirt, tights, a blouse, and big glasses. And she seemed ageless. And I think that she was supposed to be a matron. I don't know if that's what they called it, because she had a sign on her door.
She was the matron.
Was she?
But she didn't really describe herself as that when I met her. She said she was like the house mother.
Yeah.
I think she wanted it to be less formal. Did you feel that?
Yeah. But she got her own quarters. You couldn't just walk in quarters. She used to have her niece come and stay with her. She was a little girl. Yeah, she was like a mother, but not like a mother. I'd say matron. And she didn't have her own children, because I don't think she ever was married. Sometimes Miss Gurney would have a baby as well. Sometimes she'd take babies in. I think she was like a bit of a fosterer. I used to sometimes see her with a newborn that she probably would have for so many weeks before it was adopted. I come away from that place to see that I was lucky. Even though I didn't feel lucky at the time, I was lucky. Because 1, I've got my baby. 2, I haven't got anybody overseeing that. I mean, some of them girls probably got social workers for the rest of their lives, I don't know. But I did come away, and I do think I was lucky to be able to have kept my baby. It did make me realise that there's a lot worse off people. And that's the first time I've seen people like that. I'm making light of it now. It was hard. And the hardest part, it wasn't about leaving my mum. The hardest part was finding these people that were so different to myself and who hadn't been... I thought I'd been hard done by because my mum didn't want me living with her because I was pregnant. But in actual fact, that was mild compared to what the others... Some of them didn't even see the parents or have parents. They'd been brought up in foster care. And then they're expected to have a baby. They're not going to keep a baby. They've not been taught how to... And I think Miss Gurney's job was to teach. And Chris, to teach that. But sometimes you can't teach that if you've not seen it. So I think it was a bit of a learning curve for some of them. But I think some of them would never learn. Because they hadn't had any examples. Which is sad.
So you're stable upbringing really contributed to you.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Being what you call one of the lucky ones.
Yeah, definitely. But I've never regretted going in, because it did learn me about other people's circumstances.
So overall, looking back, how do you feel about the whole experience?
The whole experience was positive for me. It was just positive because it opened my eyes instead of being my head in the sand. It opened my eyes and it made me grow up.
And if you could meet some of them girls now, what do you think you'd say to them?
I'd like to see how they got on with the babies. Because you expect them in your mind's eye to still look the same as well, don't you? You know, that's why I did reach out to see if she'd give me a bit of information about her mum. Did she get married? You know, did she have any more kids? I mean, she picked a partner. Somebody selected somebody, which I thought was strange. But then, looking at her, she just wanted a baby and she wanted good genes. Mad. But yeah, so I wanted to know if she had any more. Like the lady that got her baby adopted, did she have any more? You know.
So you got your own flat. Did you move in with your partner then? Because
No.
you stayed with him, didn't you?
I stayed with him, but we split up when I was in there, and I got my own flat in Nottingham. And no, we didn't live together. That come later.
You went on and did you have 3 children with him?
I had 3 with him, yeah, altogether. But no, me and my ex was just too young. Even though he was older than me, he was still immature, so we was just too young. We gave it a good go. We had 3 kids, but it just didn't work out.
So how long were you together?
Well, I was 15. We split up when I was 25. Having a mixed race baby then was just not normal, and I don't think it would have gone down very well at the church if it was mixed race baby. So there was that element as well, but that element was everywhere, not just in Clipston.
I can only say thank you. I think talking about it and discussing it so openly will hopefully help other people too.
Well, I'd like to think that, yeah, I'd like to think so.
Because it still remains quite secretive and it's not talked about, is it?
And nobody knows anything about it, do they? And I often think to myself, to me, it was, like I said, a means to an end. To me, it was a mother and baby home, that's it. But obviously, it's got underlining things like the adoptions and social services, foster kids coming in that was pregnant. Whereas nowadays, you can foster a mum and baby, can't you, together? So there's probably not a need for them places. But at one time, if you was in foster care or in a home and you got pregnant, that's the sort of place you'd go to. Because it's specialised. Whereas now, you don't have to. So there's probably not many, I don't bet there's no mother and baby homes now. I'm making light of it now. It was odd.
Yeah.
Because and the hardest part, it wasn't about leaving my mum. The hardest part was finding these people that were so different to myself and who hadn't been. I thought I'd been hard done by because my mum didn't want me living with her because I was pregnant. But in actual fact, that was mild compared to what the others. Some of them didn't even see the parents or have parents. They'd been brought up in foster care, and then they're expected to have a baby. They're not going to keep a baby. They've not been taught how to. And I think Miss Gurney's job was to teach, and Chris, to teach that. But sometimes you can't teach that if you've not seen it.